On This Week in Enterprise Tech, exploits from certificate authorities, HP's Inc. self-destruction, and we're joined by amazing folks from Google to talk about containers and Kubernetes. Twyett on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twyett, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 209, recorded September 30th, 2016. Kubernetes.
This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by LinkedIn Learning. Develop talent and keep skills current with expert-led on-demand e-learning. To request a demo for your organization or get a free individual trial, visit learning.linkedin.com/twit. And by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV is an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, go to itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code Enterprise30.
Welcome to Twyett, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I am your host for today, Louis Maresca, your guide through the enterprise world. But I definitely don't want to do this all alone. I'm joined by some of the top enterprise tech professionals in this world, my friends, my colleagues, starting with the director of Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Mr. Brian Shee. Brian, what are you cooking up this week?
I am building some Android Arduino-based environmental monitors so we can measure air quality, or actually more customer quality, of indoor spaces. And I'm hoping to open source that once I get it done.
Fantastic. We always need better air. So we're joining us by the man that oversees the world of tech coverage, the multi-talented Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, how's the weather down there in the swamp?
Cool and fall-like. Only went up to about 89 today, so we're enjoying the cool, crisp fall weather down here, which was great because most of this week I was down in Orlando with the folks from Splunk at Splunk.conf 2016, learning all about things having to do with analytics. An exciting time.
Absolutely. Well, folks, now that you know that the best guides in the enterprise are with us, let's add the cherry on top and talk about the amazing show. We'll talk about some safe certificate authorities and how they're not becoming so safe anymore, HP's Inc. self-destruction. And also we're joined by some amazing folks from Google to talk about containers and Kubernetes. But before that, let's go ahead and jump into the blips. Buy a zero-day exploit from hackers and give it to governments and corporations. But security firm Zeridian has upped the game again. Last year, they offered the largest bounty publicly announced for iOS 9, raking it at $1 million. But the rise of iOS devices, Zeridian founder Choki Bakar thinks that iOS 10 is even more valuable. Zeridian announced that they're tripling their bounty to $1.5 million for a zero-day hack on Apple's iOS. As a gray area of law and ethics, this type of business issue, Choki is known to sell hacks to entities like the NSA. As he admits, he has no idea where his hacks actually end up. If you have the dollars, you can be a superpower in the cyber war.
Let's have a moment of silence for BlackBerry hardware. BlackBerry has finally announced that what many pundits and observers have predicted for a while now, the Canadian company will no longer make its own hardware. Instead, it will outsource its smartphone manufacturing to partners while focusing on other areas, including software and security. The announcement, which came during its second quarter financial report for fiscal 2017, was a surprise to approximately no one, because in a statement released September 28th, BlackBerry CEO John Chen restated what he had previously said, specifically that the company's future lies in software, mobile management, and security. During the announcement, BlackBerry reported that it had about 3,000 enterprise customer wins during the last 3 months, and that approximately 81% of its revenue from software and services is recurring, a sign that the new strategy could well be one that keeps BlackBerry in some form part of the industry for a long, long time to come.
We're going to talk a little bit about this topic in the bites and go deeper, but it needs some love. And HP, not too long ago, pushed out an update that kills the support for third-party ink cartridges. In a quote, "It's an old business model. You sell razors cheaply, and then you make your profit from selling expensive blades. Hewlett-Packard and other printer companies have long been using the razor blade model for years. Now they've taken it to a new level. HP, according to the Dutch ink seller 123inkt.nl, is deliberately making it impossible for you to use refurbished ink cartridges in HP OfficeJet printers. Now the EFF is jumping in, demanding that HP reverse their decision that in effect has made some users lose their investment in third-party ink cartridges. This change in HP policy is clearly a way for them to increase their profits, but at the cost of users losing faith in the brand."
You ever wanted to know the biggest solar farm in the world and how much it might cost? Well, China's largest private investor group, China Minxin, new energy investment company, is going to find out. They're in the works of placing close to a 6 million solar panel unit system that could produce a whopping 2 gigawatts of power in an investment that could cost almost $2.34 billion. The farm will be in the Ningxia region of China and is starting to offer proof that China is going all in on clean energy.
Hey, everyone. Facebook is coming to work. After spending years working on a social network for the enterprise, Facebook will launch Facebook at Work on October 10. The new service, designed to help co-workers stay connected and share information, much like they do with friends and family on the original Facebook, went into a pilot test back around January 2015. With both a mobile app and a desktop service, the new Facebook product is designed to compete with products that range from Slack to SAP Jam. Business executives will likely want to know that there's no link between the presumably more secure and enterprise-facing network and the original, purely social Facebook. But ultimately, for Facebook at Work to be successful, it will have to be seen as more of a collaboration tool than just another communication tool.
The court rules against Muni Fiber Network, forcing them to shut down a connection to a bordering township. The city council in Wilson, North Carolina, has reluctantly voted to turn off the fiber internet service it provides to a nearby town because of a court ruling that prevents expansion of municipal broadband services. And in my mind, I'm really hoping someone appeals that. But unfortunately, this is punctuating the big ISP's attitude that they should have a monopoly has been supported by the courts.
Want faster artificial intelligence? Well, there's a new benchmarking tool for deep learning, and it's being produced by Baidu Research. The firm believes that the combination of the right hardware used with the right algorithms can help propel the capabilities of deep learning forward. Baidu wants to help hardware developers optimize their processors for deep learning applications, and specifically for the training phase in which the systems learn through trial and error. Their toolset will help engineers see if a change to a processor or design improves performance and how it affects the application. Baidu's deep speech or speech recognition system is a proof that this toolset process can help improve deep learning capabilities to better the technology and smarter and make faster. Folks, Jarvis is coming. Well, folks, this ends the blips. Next up, we have some bites. But first, we have a pretty amazing sponsor for This Week in Enterprise Tech, and Padre wants to tell you about it.
Thanks, guys. Let's go ahead and take a moment to thank a sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, did you know that skills have about a 5-year shelf life? That shouldn't be surprising considering the fact that most of the really fast-growing skills that are in need today didn't exist 5 years ago. So the question is, how do you prepare for that uptake of skills? How do you make sure that you're ready to meet the future challenges? Well, folks, that's why I'm so happy to have LinkedIn Learning as a sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, LinkedIn Learning is a way to personalize expert-led on-demand e-learning from LinkedIn. This lets you keep your team engaged. LinkedIn Learning is the perfect way to promote professional development. It will identify the precise skills that you or your organization needs to achieve set goals, and it will create personalized recommendations using LinkedIn's network intelligence. Your team will have access to more than 9,000 courses and more than 25 courses that are added every week. Their library includes courses taught by world-class industry experts and covers topics ranging from leadership skills to design principles and programming. LinkedIn Learning lets you learn anytime, anywhere, with bite-sized segments that can be viewed on any device, online or off. Now, these bite-sized videos provide you immediate problem-solving possibilities and can be learned on the go. It's the perfect way to help team members close skill gaps without interrupting your latest project. And the best thing is, team solutions are available for as little as $2,000. So if you want to prepare your team, if you want to make sure that you're current, if you want to make sure that that 5-year shelf life doesn't impact you, you owe it to yourself to try LinkedIn Learning. Grow your network and your career. Visit learning.linkedin.com/twit to request a demo for your organization or to get a free individual trial. That's learning.linkedin.com/twit. And we thank LinkedIn Learning for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now back to the action with the Twilight Crew.
Thanks, Padre. So let's go ahead and jump into the bites. So we're seeing a constant stream of certificate authorities causing trust issues over the past several years. Back in 2015, Google Chrome and Firefox both banished Chinese CA, China Internet Network Information Center, due to their trust breach. An Egypt-based intermediate certificate authority called MCS Holdings, operated under the authority of CNNIC, used certificates in a man-in-the-middle attack proxy, intercepting secure connections by camouflaging themselves as destinations. 6 years ago, we heard about DigiNodar, who allowed counterfeit search for Google.com and 2 other high-traffic domains, against opening them to more man-in-the-middle attacks and other issues. Months after that, Komodo servers were hacked to create search for Gmail, Yahoo, and other high-profile domains. This caused browsers to really start hunkering down on CAs and search and blacklisting them. So fast forward to today. It brings us to Wosign, another China-based certificate authority. Mozilla is claiming that Firefox trusted Wosign as an authority, but they started to intentionally backdate certificates. What does that mean? It has to issued over the past, basically over the last 9 months, they've been issuing certificates that allows people which has banned SHA-1 already, to continue to use the SHA-1 algorithm-based certs. So what is SHA-1-based signatures were barred at the beginning of the year because the overall industry census says that they are susceptible to cryptographic collision attacks that can create counterfeit creds. Mozilla is claiming that Wosign is really concealing the fact that they're offering their paying customers an option to prolong the changeover to do certs that don't use SHA-1. So this was discovered by an IT admin from University of Central Florida, and this is actually interesting. They wanted to look for a cert for their med.ucf.edu domain, but they discovered that the cert was actually useful for ucf.edu, their main domain. So that was actually there's that collision. You see this. He wanted to see if this was a fluke. So what he did was he had access to subdomains in GitHub as well, and he went to acquire a cert for his subdomain, but he actually got a cert for GitHub.com and GitHub.io as well. So after seeing that exploit capability, he alerted Wosign. So this is really interesting. So Brian, what is, if you could talk about it a little bit, what is backdating a cert? What kind of vulnerability does that open the cert for?
The whole issue with backdating certs is that your cert, when you buy it, it's good for a certain amount of time. And certs that already exist are still being allowed to use SHA-1 signatures, well, SHA-1 hashing. By backdating it, it makes those old, quote, illegal certificates valid longer. And so basically they're cheating. They're saying, well, I'm grandfathered in, still take my SHA-1 hash. And everybody's saying, no, this has got to change. SHA-1's been broken for a very, very long time. And it's time you guys, change. And the fact that these guys are basically, saying, hey, you're cheating. We're tired of that, and sorry.
We are kind of tired of that, aren't we? So, Curtis, I want to ask you. So, each company like Google and Firefox and Mozilla and so on, they're great. They're kind of like browser superpowers, right? They've a lot of customers out there using their browsers. Should they be tightening down their nooses around companies like Wosign? Shouldn't they be collecting some kind of data around certs and CAs and how they're being used, and maybe putting them on blacklists and kind of, again, more tightening the nooses faster? Because this is a huge trust issue.
Oh, it is a huge trust issue. And I think what you see is an example of a lot of companies that, for various reasons, essentially believe that a cert is a cert is a cert. In other words, if it is a cert that comes from a third party, then the default assumption is that it's trustworthy. And I think that what we need to do is, in a lot of especially smaller organizations, go with a different basic assumption. Go with the assumption that certs are available, but that you have to have some sort of verification that they are legitimate, that they are trustworthy, and that they're using up-to-date security. This is going to be hard for a lot of small to mid-sized organizations that don't have a security specialist or security team on their staff. But it does bring up the importance of going back, double-checking, staying current on the technology and the events, and making sure that every piece in your trust chain is actually trustworthy, rather than going off and assuming that the most basic components are doing everything you want them to.
Absolutely. So Brian, tell me what you think. Do you think, I see a little bit of a trend here? Obviously, I see a lot of these China certificate authorities kind of getting in trouble here. Are there too many authorities out there? And what sort of vetting do they go through? Do you know?
Well, I tell you, there is no vetting, or almost none. There's no international authority for vetting certificate authorities. And if you've gone through the list of certs that are so-called authorities in a typical browser, that list scrolls on and on and on. My personal opinion, we've had Cricket Lou on the show talking about DNS Dane. I think the days of the certificate authority need to start going away. We need to start moving away from it. We need to start using something where the person that owns the domain signs it, not a third party that seems to be untrustworthy.
So this is interesting, though. If you think about it, the browsers have to have their white list of certificate authorities, and then of course they have to give the ability to kind of open the door to enterprises being able to add to whitelist as well, because they might have their own CAs or their own certificates they need to create for internal purposes. So what do you guys think? Do you think that the browsers should be faster? Because you got to remember, the normal model of an installed piece of software, it's hard to get updates out to them. So shouldn't these browsers be changing their model in the way that they actually blacklist CAs, especially since the door is pretty open to these things when they generate them? Shouldn't they make it easier to make sure that browsers can close the door and blacklist things?
Yeah, I totally think so. And here's the model that I think might work. I'm big fan of DNS Dane. And the nice thing is, instead of keeping a whitelist, you can always create a corporate whitelist. That's not that hard. And you can manually load it or use some sort of manager to load it onto the browsers. But something like DNS Dane, since you're going to be doing the DNS lookups anyway, DNS Dane literally just puts a certificate in the DNS record. So every time you're doing a DNS lookup, you can also validate the certificate. So that means no more whitelists or less whitelists, and we can validate every piece of the web page. Because remember, web pages aren't just a single HTML pull. It's many, and a lot of times they come from different locations. So do we have to go and recheck a third party every time? No, I think being able to have a validation in the DNS record might actually speed things up instead of slow things down.
Absolutely. So Curtis, this kind of brings us to the fact that, the enterprise business, and they're just kind of slow to roll out updates, right? So, this could be potentially a huge problem going forward, even for the enterprise.
Oh, it could in fact be an enormous problem, because one of the places where companies are slowest to roll out any updates is in their infrastructure, and particularly their network infrastructure. There are a lot of reasons for that, many of them historical. I think most of us can remember the days of the annual Cisco revs. And it's one of those areas where we have a number of things running into one another, because in most software development, the trend is toward faster and faster updates, right up to the point of the continuous deployment, in which you can see 20 or more updates per day. You contrast that with the operational folks, and especially the operational folks in security and infrastructure, where if they could get away with the annual update, they would do it. It's going to take a good while. I mean, we've already seen elements of this that have taken a long time. Cheever brought up the fact that SHA-1 is still being used by so many different components, and we know that that is a technology that's an encryption that was shown to be broken more than a decade ago. 10 years later, we're still using it. So this is a problem that I can't imagine is going to be fixed anything like universally anytime like soon.
Yeah, it's too bad. So, well, that does it for that one. I think we should probably move on here before we get too angry at certificate authorities. We do have one more story, and then we're going to get to the guests. And this one, just as Brian has brought up before, it's about HP. And the interesting about them is they obviously have always followed this market, this sales capability of or process of selling a printer for fairly inexpensive, but then kind of digging in at you when you actually sell the cartridges. And they're noticing that companies, other printer companies, are starting to offer cheaper cartridges or cartridges that last a lot longer. But HP has a different way of handling this, and the EFF is not too happy about them, the Electronic Foundation and Electronic Frontier Foundation. They sent a letter to the CEO and asking them to apologize because HP is actually self-destructing or sending out an update to their printers to self-destruct their cartridges, their ink cartridges, and the ink in the system. HP's been sabotaging OfficeJet printers for a while with their firmware, and it prevents the use of non-HP inkjet printer cartridges, as well as the refill types of cartridges. And it basically forces customers to go and buy new cartridges. And this is, again, similar model. They call it you want fries with that model, where when you go to McDonald's or something and they always ask, do you want fries with that? It's always the add-on model that they're getting you with, and they want to continue to make sure that business is lucrative. The self-destructing mechanism informs customers that ink cartridges are damaged, quote unquote, and they have to replace them. So this is interesting because this is essentially going to the closed door market, as HP's always wanted to do. But it's also making it that if no matter how much investment you put in on these cartridges, because they could be expensive. I mean, I've got $40, $50, $60 a cartridge sometimes. That investment has a time bomb, and it's going to go out, and you better use that cartridge before it goes out. So, guys, Brian, what do you think? Is this good business principle, bad business principle? Is this hurting HP?
Well, this is depending on which side of the street you're looking at it from. So, from HP's point of view, let's put it this way: I used to work in distribution, and my boss basically told me, if I could write some sort of contract so that people would only buy consumables from me, I'd give away the printers for free. And that's basically what HP is doing. There is no way, some of these more advanced printers only cost, $160. So it's a loss leader. It's like Colgate toothpaste or Gillette razors. Gillette's famous for giving away handles because it only runs their razor, can only use their razors. Now, from a consumer standpoint, this is bad. Like JJ, I think, said in the chat room about how some people are starting to put in sensors so that if you put a third-party battery in your Nexus 7, it won't charge anymore. I'm not sure if that's the exact same thing, but it feels like it from the consumer standpoint. Consumers want to be able to keep the price within reason. Now, let's quantify within reason. If you ever do the math and you did it based upon those not cheap, but those little tricolor ink cartridges that barely have, say, 5 or 6 milliliters of ink per color in there, if you do the math, that comes out to almost $21,000 a gallon. And I've applauded Epson for their new series where they have external ink tanks. It doesn't care as long as you understand that if you use third-party ink and it causes a jam, I'm sorry, we're not going to honor the warranty. From a consumer standpoint, third-party ink is a godsend, especially for corporations that print a lot. And I think this is going to be a really interesting case. Now, as an addendum, just today, HP announced that they are going to be, in a couple weeks, putting an optional patch that will turn off this DRM feature. They still claim it's for your security, but they do appear to be afraid of the backlash. And, I think maybe Epson's got the right thing. In fact, Epson's a sponsor of the Twit network, and maybe we should give them some love.
Absolutely, we need some love. So, Chris, do you think this is going to affect the enterprise in a way? Because obviously they need ink. A lot of great photo printers out there today, especially photo businesses, use ink. How do you think this will affect? Are we seeing lawsuits on this because it's going to raise the cost to basically print things out?
Well, I think it's interesting because one of the things that you've seen in the enterprise is that lots and lots of enterprises have gotten away from actually buying their own printers to begin with. It's amazing just how many businesses of any size have managed print services supplying their printers and all the consumables. So for those enterprises, the cost of individual ink cartridges sort of gets wrapped up in the total printing and maintenance charges. For smaller companies, I think that they would start to care a great deal. For consumers, for individuals, this is an enormous deal. This is one of those things where, to be brutally honest, I'm surprised this was a step that wasn't taken years ago. And I think that it's only because Epson thought that they could get away with some of the provisions of the DMCA. We've seen other companies in other areas do this sort of thing. There have been some notable brouhahas in places like agriculture over what's allowed if you want to fix your own tractor versus taking it in to the officially recognized repair depot. We're seeing more and more companies who are looking for profits every place they can find them, getting out and trying to clamp down on the third parties that they feel are eating into what should rightfully be theirs. Will we see a lawsuit? Probably, although the update may well help stave that off. But do I think this is the last we're going to hear of something like this? Absolutely not. I think that this kind of effort will go away around the same time that airlines stop charging baggage fees.
I agree. I think we're going to start seeing some companies out there create a market around this potentially, even maybe some ways to make sure your cartridge doesn't report that it's expired, some type of thing. So, gentlemen, let's move on. We have some pretty great guests coming up soon, so we want to give them a chance to talk about some containers and some container automation. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about another great sponsor of This Week Enterprise Tech, and Padre wants to tell you all about it.
We'll get right back to This Week in Enterprise Tech, but first let's go ahead and take another moment to thank a sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, we all know that there's a high demand for cybersecurity professionals, for IT folk who can understand the challenges and the demands of the modern workplace. But where do you go to get those skills? Where do you go to understand the things that are changing in the industry that you love? Well, you could do an apprenticeship. You could do it like I did, which is just to be around when certain fields are started, or you could turn to IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV is the largest repository of IT knowledge on the internet. They've got over 1,000 hours of content and more than 30 hours that are added every week. You can stream courses live and on demand worldwide to your Chromecast, your Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or PC. This lets you learn at your own pace, both at home, at work, and on the go with your mobile device, with your laptop, or with your desktop. Their courses include topics like Certified Information Systems Security Professional, CompTIA Security Plus, CompTIA Plus, and Ethical Hacking version 9. Their October courses include CCNA Routing and Switching, Installation of Storage and Compute with Server 2016, Windows Operating Fundamentals, Red Hat Linux Networking with Server 2016, and more. They give you transcripts that let you follow from start to finish of any particular lesson, but more importantly, it lets you jump inside of a lesson. Let's say you're an IT professional and you just need a reference to something that maybe you forgot. Well, that's exactly what IT Pro TV lets you do, because you can find the question you're having, jump to that part of the video, be in and out and back to work. They also offer you 100 plus step-by-step virtual machine labs and transcender practice exams. That's a $109 value. You can take advantage of their low monthly subscription price and no hassle cancellation policy. And while subscriptions are still the best value, they also offer courses on Amazon Video Direct, just in case you want to try before you buy. Now, if you're currently signed up for an enterprise account with an IT Pro TV competitor and they're subjecting you to a rate increase, IT Pro TV will match your previous year's pricing on that account so that you and your team can learn at an affordable rate. IT Pro TV is used by Harvard, MIT, UCSD, Stanford, and more. If they trust IT Pro TV, don't you think you should too? Visit itpro.tv/enterprise to access the most popular IT certifications on the planet. Premium subscriptions are normally $57 a month or $570 for the year, but we've got a special offer. Try it free for 7 days when you sign up using our code ENTERPRISE30. You'll also receive 30% off the lifetime of your account. That's less than $40 per month or $399 for the entire year. Just visit itpro.tv/enterprise. That's itpro.tv/enterprise and use the code ENTERPRISE30 to try it free for 7 days. Plus, save 30% off the life of your account. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Thanks, Padre. So let's get into my favorite part of the show, where we get to bring the experts to share their knowledge with the Try It Right. So we welcome Tim Hocking, one of the original Kubernetes engineers, and Aparna Sinha, Senior Product Manager for Google Container. Tim and Aparna, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys do?
Sure. I'm a software engineer. I work at Google. I've been working on the Kubernetes project for the last couple of years. And before that, I worked on our internal systems called Borg and Omega.
Great. I'm Aparna Sinha. I'm a product manager on Kubernetes and Google Container Engine, which is our internal hosted version of Kubernetes. Prior to that, I worked on the Android platform team at Google.
Fantastic. So for the folks playing at home, we always have this kind of first day sort of thing, and the first time being on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about Kubernetes and how it compares to traditional containers?
Sure. Kubernetes is a management system for containers. It is not a container itself. So we use systems like Docker to run your applications in a cluster of nodes, VMs or physical machines, and we manage them based on the resources that you want to consume and the resources that are available. We figure out where to put them. We keep them alive. We manage them at a network level. We do load balancing and service discovery and all the things that you need to build a distributed application today. It's a distributed application toolkit, really.
And customers typically look to containers when they want to increase developer productivity. They want to make sure that developers can launch applications very quickly and iterate on them. And also, containers are a popular choice when customers want to move to a cloud-like architecture, whether it's a private cloud on their own premise or they're trying to use a public cloud with a vendor like Google.
Got it. So I hate to bring that word up, and I'll say it lightly, the DevOps word. I know I'm personally have had to deal with DevOps in the past, and it's not an easy thing to do. So can you guys maybe compare a little bit how Kubernetes compares to some of the other orchestration systems like Mesospheres or Mesos and Docker Swarm?
Sure. Mesos is a system that focuses on resource management, first and foremost. It carves your cluster up into pools of resources that you then offer to a second level scheduling framework. And Mesos supports a wide variety of frameworks that you can use to run workloads in your Mesos cluster. Compared also to Kubernetes, Kubernetes is a little bit more app-centric, a little less infrastructure-centric. We really want to focus on what application developers are doing and want to do with the system. Kubernetes is a one-level scheduling system. We don't have this two-level system. Comparing it to other systems like Docker Swarm, Swarm is actually a very similar system to Kubernetes in a lot of concepts. So it's actually sort of hard to draw some comparisons there. Kubernetes draws on the Google experience. Docker draws on what Docker thinks the user experience should be from the Docker perspective.
Yeah, Kubernetes is architected from the ground up for container orchestration as opposed to VM management or management of any other type of resource. It's really container specific. And it came out of Tim's experience and the co-founders here from the Borg team at Google, who wanted to take that expertise and make it available to the rest of the world. So it's very container centric.
Got it. So yeah, Google's just coming off their big conference here, and they've announced a whole lot of changes on the container management and orchestration, and to make it a whole lot easier. What is Kubernetes' position in the world of virtualization, and what actually got announced?
Yesterday, we announced, among other things, we announced the Kubernetes 1.4 release and its availability in Google Container Engine. Kubernetes is an open source project, first and foremost. So we announced the 1.4.0 release of that, which means it's available for anybody in the world to use. This is the result of several months of work by hundreds and hundreds of developers around the world. So a pretty incredible release, a ton of really great features. And then we are also launching 1.4.0 on Google Container Engine, which is our hosted version of Kubernetes. So that's generally available today.
Fantastic. So the Kubernetes webpage talks a little bit about planet scale. Can you tell me a little bit about that, and what do you mean by that?
Sure. I think that one of the best examples of what we mean by planet scale is Pokemon Go, which is a game that is played around the world and is actually hosted on Google Container Engine, which runs Kubernetes. And so that's what we really mean by planet scale, is users all over the world, and an application, a game being able to scale to meet the demands of a game like that's a augmented reality type game of the nature of Pokemon Go. That's one example of planet scale.
Well, I've been dealing with a lot of virtualization at the University of Hawaii, and when you start dealing with load balancing, that's like, I'm going to have to buy an F5 or a Coyote Systems load balancer. But from digging around your load your web page, it sounds like there's built-in load balancing, and that's gotta make the enterprise customers really, really interested. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So load balancing is such a fundamental part of this sort of third generation cloud native operation, right? Nothing is a singleton anywhere. And so when we built Kubernetes, we figured we had to go out the door with load balancing. It's a requirement. So we built into the system, first of all, an abstraction of services which have IP addresses and ports and everything you expect from a network service. And then you can implement that abstraction however your network environment sees fit. And along with the distribution of the system, we ship a couple of default implementations of load balancing so that even if you don't have an F5, if you don't have a cloud load balancer, you still have a form of load balancing that works. It's client-side load balancing. So you get sort of a very distributed decision making. So you spread the load across your cluster, and your applications don't see it. It's really transparent to your system, to your applications. It's part of the Kubernetes system.
Yeah, and if a customer chooses to go with Google Cloud Platform has Google Cloud Load Balancing, which is global in nature, and that is, for example, what Pokemon uses.
Hi, this is Kurt. I've got a question really from the enterprise side of thing, and especially when you're talking about the global load balancing. We've seen a lot lately about the rise of hybrid clouds. Now, is Kubernetes designed specifically for the hybrid situation, or is it going to work best when you're dealing with one particular type of cloud at a time?
It's absolutely designed for hybrid. We're not tied to any one cloud provider. We're actually pretty fanatical about making sure that our abstractions are portable and work across different cloud providers. That includes your on-premise data centers. So everything that we've built for Google Cloud, for example, or for Amazon, you can also build for your own environment. Right now, a lot of enterprise stuff is very customized and very specific to your own installation. So it might need a little bit of work from you, the cluster administrators, when you're setting up a Kubernetes cluster, but you can implement all the same stuff that we implemented for Google Cloud very easily through our Kubernetes API, which is a very declarative, straightforward API to use. you can then take your applications and you can port them across these different cloud environments, run some on your premise, run some in Amazon, run some in Google, and it all just works, right? To a first degree, everything is portable. And this was completely on purpose. We did this, from the very beginning. We knew that hybrid was going to be an important part of the next 10 years of the industry as people shift from on-premise into the cloud.
Yeah, and I would add that Kubernetes 1.4, the release that we just put out this week, adds quite a bit of support for hybrid workloads. And we've been doing that consistently over the past year. So for example, we've made it much, much easier to install a Kubernetes cluster anywhere, whether it's in AWS or it's on-premise. In just 2 commands, you can start the master and add nodes to it, and it's so much easier to start a cluster. Secondly, we've added a number of features around the umbrella term cluster federation, which allows you to manage clusters that may be in different clouds. So you may have a cluster on-premise, you may have another one in Google and another one in AWS. And with a federation control plane, it's a separate control plane, you can actually have a service that deploys to all of those separate clusters. You can also manage replica sets across those clusters, and a number of the other objects, fundamental objects in Kubernetes, are now available through this federation API.
So, Aparna, you talked a little bit about getting started and how easy it is to get started. Can you guys maybe talk a little bit about where does somebody go? How do they get started using containers and the orchestration tools such as Kubernetes?
Sure. The website, the Kubernetes.io website is a great place to start. We have a number of tutorials and, of course, a description of what Kubernetes is. That's one great way to get started. And there's also, of course, Google Container Engine. And Google Container Engine is a great way to just also play around with Kubernetes. It's a extremely simple, just one command, one click actually, to start a Kubernetes cluster in Google Container Engine. And for new users, there's, I think, also a free trial. And so it's really easy to experiment there.
I'll add to that real quickly. We also have something called Minikube, which is a local development environment, which lets you essentially run Kubernetes on your laptop, so you can play with it right there, get a sense for how the clusters would operate, and you can sort of try before you buy.
It's interesting. I didn't know that they had that local development environment. So does that simulate multiple nodes in the cluster, or just one single kind of node? So when you have your pod and your nodes on your pod on the nodes, you just can simulate that, or you can simulate more than one pod, more than one node?
It simulates a single node right now that lets you play with your cluster, with all the Kubernetes APIs, with all the deployment objects, with the built-in load balancing abstraction. So you can deploy 10 copies of your application. Even though they're all running on your laptop, you can run them through the load balancer, and you can get a sense of how these things feel and how you would build your applications.
Yeah, and when you do go to our website and you look at the tutorials, you'll find that there are startup tutorials for each of the different types of clouds. So if you want to start something in AWS or you want to start something on-premise, there are easy ways to do all of those.
I wanted to ask a question. You've been talking about ease of getting started and ease of doing deployments that are on multiple cloud types and multiple instances. I've been spending a lot of time lately talking with executives about issues of governance. And so I think one of my big questions is, are there facilities within the Kubernetes APIs that are helpful when it comes to implementing proper enterprise governance, or at the very least, does Kubernetes not stand in the way of good governance?
I think we're just starting to really get into this problem space. We've added a bunch of things in the last couple of releases around access control and role-based authentication and authorization. We've started adding new policy objects, new policy types. We've got some new security objects, some new security APIs introduced in Kubernetes 1.4. So I think we're entering this space. I don't think we're pretty far from being done with it.
Yep. And what we find when we talk to enterprise customers is that they usually have some sort of centralized policy management system that they want to plug Kubernetes into. And so that's they're looking for like a way to plug in IAM policies or RBAC. And so we are continuously offering support for those things.
So the University of Hawaii is a Google university, raw Google. And I've got a lot of students there. But I'm really, really curious how well something like this will deal with the research issues. One of the things that researchers start getting really upset about is when storage, cloud storage goes across borders. Is the global load balancing, are there going to be ways of spinning up additional machines on demand? And is there a way to, say, put borders on it? So if someone's doing a research project and they can't go beyond the border, is there a way to control the national boundaries where our data goes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are many levels of that type of control. So, for example, if you're using cluster federation, then you can set. If you're using cluster federation, you can set where your clusters are. I mean, you don't have to have clusters that are global first of all, unless you have users that are global. And then if you do have users that are global, you can set that, for example, traffic should be served out of the nearest available cluster so that, traffic is served by a local cluster, for example. And similarly for the other objects, you can set how many replicas you want in which geography. And that's specific to federation. And obviously then if you're using Google Cloud, you would decide where you want to host your application, where you want to store your data, and then it would only be served out of there.
Fabulous. I'm curious. Lots of universities have gone LDAP for their authentication. It's, Active Directory is not involved a lot of times. What kinds of authentication sources can we use for Kubernetes? Is it AD only? Is it LDAP only? Radius? What kinds of flavors can we play with?
So we're just starting to work in this space in the last couple of releases. The goal here is to integrate with whatever systems people want to bring into it. The most recent one that we've added that was interesting is a webhook callout, which gives you a lot of freedom to tie it into Cloud IAM or other systems that we don't understand natively. We've also added OpenID Connect. That work is in progress still. As for Active Directory and LDAP specifically, I don't think that we have built-in integrations for those things, but we're just at the beginning of this process, and we're going to take some feedback from all the people who are out there using it and figure out how to make these integrations work, because we use LDAP at Google too.
Well, I'll tell you, this is really exciting. Can you talk about who's adopting, who's playing with this? Are there any big companies? Can you say?
Any big companies? You said playing with. Well, we just announced Pokemon Go is the largest Google Container Engine user. They are using, let's say, quite a lot of machines to run their worldwide application. There's a really neat blog post written by our customer reliability engineering lead, Luke Stone, who wrote some really great experience stories from bringing up Pokemon Go on Google Cloud and on Container Engine in particular. Alongside that, we've got a big customer that we announced this week. Philips Hue is running the backends for their lighting systems on Container Engine. And then we've got thousands of other customers who are deployed on top of Container Engine, and also customers who are not in Container Engine, people who are running Kubernetes in their own data centers or in other clouds.
Yeah, and you can find many of the customer reference stories on our website for Google Container Engine. So there are many of them, and I think we can say that this is one of the fastest growing projects, fastest growing products that we've seen in Google Cloud as a whole. And I think it's been quoted earlier this week that we've seen our usage double every 90 days consistently.
Got it. So one of the constant issues that containerization applications have is how they manage their state for their apps. And they certainly have no shortage of options. They have relational databases, key value stores, container volumes. Can you talk a little bit about how Kubernetes is now handling all of that and some of the new stuff that's going on?
Sure. This is a place that's very near and dear to my heart. We have in Kubernetes a couple of principal abstractions that help around state. The first one that we've been working on is called persistent volumes, and it lets you, through the Kubernetes API, declare your intention to use some storage. What that storage is doesn't necessarily need to be known by the application developers. It can be known by the cluster administrators, and the system will automatically map what's available to what the developers have asked for. In Kubernetes 1.4, we've made this even more amazing and dynamic. You can ask for storage that doesn't exist, and it will be provisioned on the fly for you. And provisioning is up to the administrator to configure what they want. So now as a cluster administrator, I can offer different grades of storage in my cluster, and I can have people choose which grade of storage they want to use. Maybe they want to use the silver, or they want to use the tin, or they want to use the platinum. And they don't need to know what platinum means. They just know that platinum is better than silver. And this gives you the ability to take your workloads now and again, stay portable. You can pick it up from your on-prem and you can move it into Google Cloud, and you can redefine what platinum means, but the applications that were depending on platinum will still work. Those storage volumes then live for the lifetime of your application, and when you're done with them, and only when you're done with them, you let them go and the system will reclaim them. That's one primary primitive. The second primitive that we've been working on in the last couple of releases is something called pet sets. Which is a way of describing stateful workloads that need a little bit more hand-holding than the typical containers. Containers are assumed to be sort of ephemeral and not have any identity and not save any state. Well, pet set says the reality is there's a million applications out there that need to store state and that have some concept of identity, maybe in quorums or those sorts of things. And pet set helps you to build and deploy those applications on Kubernetes.
Yeah, and we are really building on this pet set work. So the pet sets was announced as an alpha feature in 1.3, which was our release back in July. And it is now also available as part of alpha clusters on GKE as part of 1.4. So just this week, we've announced the concept of an alpha cluster so that customers can play around with this type of functionality and all alpha functionality for a limited time in a test environment in GKE. But on your question as a whole about stateful applications, we have added quite a bit of functionality in 1.4. So init containers, which are containers that are used, when you're starting, for example, a database or you're starting an application, these are the things that these are pods and containers that you might initialize with. That's one piece. Also, we are continuously adding support for batch applications, so scheduled jobs, which is the same concept as cron in Unix. That feature is now available as well, and it was much awaited. And on the whole, while these are the building blocks, we actually want to provide out of the gate one-click deployment of reference applications, including stateful applications. And so that's a project that we're working with a company called Deis and they're providing a package manager called Helm. And what we're doing is we're testing a number of applications and providing them as a set of tested Helm charts. And the first ones are going to be, in fact, stateful applications, MariaDB and Jenkins. So those will be available alongside 1.4.
So something interesting I read about, you guys talked a little bit about cluster federation, and I've heard a little bit about federated ingress. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that actually helps an enterprise or a business?
Sure. Federated. So I'll back up. Ingress is our abstraction around L7 HTTP load balancing. So federated ingress is the idea that you can build a URL that is spanned across multiple clusters around the world. And wherever you're accessing that cluster from, or wherever you're accessing that URL from, you're going to get the cluster that's local to you, that's closest to you. So this is something that we've been working on. It's alpha in the 1.4 release. But to a first approximation, this is magic. I mean, this is really the future of things. The idea that you don't need to worry about geographies. You don't need to have different names for which continent your applications are running on. Your users don't have to know or see any of that. They just go to the right place automatically.
Yeah, this is what I was referring to just a little bit earlier when someone asked about load balancing and how that works across geographies. And federated ingress is an object, as Tim described, in Kubernetes, and federated ingress in Google Cloud Platform actually uses GCLB.
Well, y'all have been great talking about the new features, the features that are just getting started. And as we're coming down towards the end, I was wondering if you could talk at all to give us hints about problems that are still to be solved, problems that you're looking forward to addressing in Kubernetes upcoming, anything that our viewers and listeners should be looking for as we move through the rest of 2016 and into 2017 on the Kubernetes front.
Why don't I start?
Go ahead.
On Google Container Engine in particular, we want to make it easier for customers to continue to run their workloads without having to experience any type of management overhead if they so choose. And so we will be offering managed upgrades, managed health monitoring, and overall just taking more and more of the management of the cluster and making that available through Google SRE. SRE is Site Reliability Engineering, and so we'll be providing much higher SLOs for not just the master, but also for the rest of the cluster. And that's a project that's going to roll out across the rest of next year, I think.
You're also going to see, and we're going to continue to focus on streamlining the system, making sure that installs and setups are really easy, that our command lines and our APIs have really sort of high sheen porcelain interfaces that let you do things with single command lines. And we're going to continue to work on scale. We've committed to more than doubling the scale of our clusters by the end of this year. We'll continue to work on that next year. Networking and integrations with vendors, storage and vendors. We're working with a lot of storage people to produce drivers for different storage systems. So we have a ton of things in flight. We're also spending a significant amount of time on things like documentation, which are not your classical engineering activities, but are super critical to the success of the project. And we're also spending a lot of time on community engineering, which is getting our community into more positions of ownership and responsibility, where we can spread the load some, but we can also make sure that this project has a lifetime that is unbounded by Google or Red Hat or any one company.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, you've done it again. You've used up another hour of listening to the best dang enterprise podcasts in the known universe, according to 9 out of 10 containers. Tim Hockin and Aparna Sinha from Google, thank you so much for coming and being on This Week Enterprise Tech. Some super interesting topics.
Pleasure.
Would you come back again? Would you come back again and talk to us a little bit about Kubernetes? Okay, fantastic. Because I think we just kind of got to scratch the top. Fantastic. So thank you so much for coming. We're going to go ahead and schedule again. So thank you so much for coming. And that was Tim Hockin, Kubernetes engineer, and Aparna Sinha, the senior product manager. Can you guys tell a little bit about where we can find Kubernetes and you and your work?
Kubernetes.io is our website. For those of you who can't spell Kubernetes, we'll abbreviate it to K8S.io. We'll also get you to the same place. You can go there. You can read about what the product is. That'll link you through to some docs and some examples and some tutorial videos. I see Brendan up on the screen there, one of our founding engineers. And you can learn all about Kubernetes there. If you want to participate or contribute, you can go to our GitHub, which is github.com/Kubernetes, and you'll find all of our repositories there. That's where we track all of our issues and community features and documentation and things like that.
And then for Google Container Engine, of course, there's the Google Cloud Platform website, and you can find out all the details about our hosted Kubernetes offering there. You can also go to the Pantheon console from there, and then sign up for the free trial to try out GKE.
Fantastic. So that was Tim Hockin and Aparna Sinha from Google. And gentlemen, I want to thank you as well. Thank you for being on the show and being part of Twiat, my colleagues, and the reason for this great show. Starting you with Mr. Curtis Franklin. Always amazing having you on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about what's next for you and where we can find your work?
Well, we got a lot of great radio stuff coming up, some podcasts over at Information Week. We've got Information Week's Expert Voice, where we talk to IT professionals. Come over and check it out. Some really good information on how people are using technology to make life better for their users and their organizations. In addition, I'm doing a lot with DevOps and Agile frameworks. getting ready to put out a big piece on open source DevOps tools. So come on over to informationweek.com. Check us out. You can always keep up with me on Twitter at KG4GWA, and I hope you do.
Mr. Curtis Franklin. Also Brian Chi, where can we find you, Mr. Director of Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu? Amazing to have you. Where can we find you, your work, and what's next?
Well, I have definitely got the Twitter fever. I've been sending out all kinds of interesting things, especially when we're doing a lot of things with IoT. Next week, apparently, I just got sent an announcement that is under embargo, so I can't talk about it. Shh. But hopefully next week we'll have something that will be announced literally just an hour or two before the show. So look for a nice big fat IoT announcement next week. My Twitter handle is ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab. Look forward to seeing you in the Twitterverse.
Mr. Brian Chi, thanks again for coming. And of course, thank you to you, our loyal listeners. We love doing this show. We couldn't do this show without you coming back each week to watch This Week in Enterprise Tech. Make sure that you know that we have lots of shows, so check them out. Head over right now to twit.tv/Twiet. You can see the entire archive of all of our Twiet episodes, especially this episode, for your mobile phone, for your tablet, for your desktop, every which way you want to watch the show. And also remember, we do this show live at 1:30 Pacific time. You can come into the show and watch the show live at live.twit.tv. And as long as you're watching the show live, why don't you just jump in to our live chat room as well? You can ask live questions to our guests, our co-hosts. You can inspire us with your wisdom and maybe take the show in a different direction. And finally, I want to thank everyone at Twit who makes the show possible. Thanks to Leo and Lisa for allowing us to continue to do This Week in Enterprise Tech week after week. Thanks to our super producer, Brian. And also thanks to Father Robert Ballister for including us in his enterprise adventures. And, of course, thanks to TD this week. You have the camera on yourself there?
Not really, but...
Can you tell us about what you do at Twit?
I edit... Well, at Twit, I edit and I tell people about sharks and why you should not drink shark fin soup.
Fantastic. Good topic. Thanks again. You can always follow me at twitter.com/LouMM, a great place to see all that I do outside the studio, and also a great place to suggest topics about the show and future guests. But until next time, I'm Luis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.